but he understands that the body has this, this inherent recuperative power to heal itself. And that's what he's putting more faith in than the chemotherapy. And the exciting part about that whole thing is that he told me that. I didn't tell him that, he told me that. And that's the exciting thing about being a chiropractic, is getting people to that level of thinking. And you can only do that if you are teaching people from the heart and with love, and you have nothing else attached to it. If I have an outcome attached that he's going to get well, if I have a certain dollar figure or a certain amount of visits that are going to come in, it probably is not going to cause your practice to thrive. It may for a few people. They'll buy into it and say, hey, that really sounds cool. I want to see the curve come back on my x-ray. And even though I do x-rays, pre and post x-rays, and I like to see a curve come back, what I really like to do is see the person's mindset change. And that's the mindset I'm not talking about, is they actually believe that their body is self-healing again. It's not a meme that you see on TikTok or Facebook, but they actually own it.
Well, welcome to the Vitalistic Voice. My name is Dr. Colin Elkin. Today, I'm extra thrilled because I have a guest on with me today who I've been following for a long time. And this is really my first chance to get to meet him, connect with him, and get to know him. But Dr. Kevin Jackson is part of a legacy in this profession of chiropractic. He's so vocally outspoken on social media and really exudes this just command for the principle of chiropractic and this love towards his patients and practice. And you see that in his discussions, in his pictures, and the testimonials of his patients. So I know you're going to love this interview with Dr. Kevin. Hey, thanks for being with us today, Dr. Kevin.
Thank you, Colin. I appreciate it very much. And I'm almost getting red in the face from that introduction. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Well, it's really wonderful. And so I got to say, so first of all, I mean, you definitely exude this principle. Excuse me. You exude this principle of just love and just commitment to your practice. I know you've been practicing a long time, but I'd like to go back way back when, because as a fellow Canadian, I know you're a Canadian guy. You know, you grew up in that St. Catharines area. Am I right by saying that?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let's talk about what inspired you to get into chiropractic.
Well, what happened was my dad was going to the chiropractor. His name was Jim Adams, and he was a graduate from CMCC. And I think I was around 16 years old at the time, and I was working at Canadian Tire gas station. And I had a bad cold that wouldn't go away, so our family doctor gave me some antibiotics, and I had an allergic reaction to it. And I was working the midnight shift at Canadian Tire. And so my boss came in. I ended up going to the hospital, and I got on some type of medication. But I was sent home, and I wasn't thriving. I had a bad reaction to antibiotics, being allergic to them. So Dr. Adams told my dad to bring Kevin in and let's get him adjusted and see how he does. And of course, I got my first adjustment and I started doing much better, and I stayed under care and I listened to Dr. Adams. And I just got a love for getting adjusted and having my body work better. That's basically what I understood chiropractic to be, is I get adjusted and I feel better and I work better. And I was an athlete at the time. I played rugby, and I played much better and I recovered much better. So that was my first introduction into chiropractic. It was just very simple, but it was a powerful lesson in how simplicity and a good adjustment, even though Dr. Adams may or may not have been a philosophically on board with what a subluxation is, he made an adjustment to me and I got better. And that's where really it took off. And I ended up going down to college, went on a rugby scholarship, and I met, of course, as the story goes, is I met my wife on the first day of classes, and she asked me out, and we went to DE. And
Perfect.
true story, true story. She said, "Hey, let's go to DE. My dad's down in Miami, and I'd like for you to hear him." And so I was just really, the way things got set up for me, it was just very fortunate. I'm a very fortunate person. I've been given a lot. And so I went down to DE and I listened to Dr. Sid and of course, Dr. Sigafoose and Chuck Ribley and all that whole gang that you're familiar with. And so right from the get-go, I fell in love with the whole idea. And I would just lay in a DE room and just listen to all the great speakers and absorb all that. And so I was right from the beginning, had, I think, a thorough understanding of the power of the philosophy of chiropractic. So that was that.
I think I was probably at that DE seminar, and in fact, I can even remember the hotel. So I remember that very vividly. But so I want to dive right into this because you are part now of a family who really has left a legacy in chiropractic, and that is the Sigafoose family. So tell me, obviously going down to life and having that experience, because I'm a CMCC grad,
Mm.
so the experience going through school is very different. And I'm not going to say one's better or worse. I'm just going to say different at this point. So tell me how that experience was being part of that legacy.
Well, it was great in a way that there happened to be other people who were at the school at the same time who came from other different families. Like, for example, in our class, we had Dr. Kale's daughter. So he's an upper cervical specific um, uh, practitioner, and he's dead at this point. But I ended up getting certified in upper cervical before I even graduated. So I took a 100-hour course outside of what Life College had to offer, and but there was all kinds of chiro kids there, and so it was a real at the time, and at the time it wasn't Life University, it was a Life Chiropractic College. But I think, to me, if I look at all the schools, it was just a mecca for philosophy and technique, and having a big volume practice was at that time something that was very important, because it was like an outreach to people and making a difference in your community, and getting into the mindset of serving others more than serving yourself. And I don't know if that was available at many other places at the time. I know a lot of coaches have adapted and adopted to that type of thinking because it's so good. But boy, I was just, again, fortunate enough to be right in the mecca of that, where Sid Williams was the one doing the orientation. I mean, the what is that? Every week he'd do like a talk. You'd get into the auditorium, and you'd have to listen to him, and that with that southern accent and such. But it was just a mecca for learning what we cherish now, chiropractic philosophy and chiropractic technique. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So tell me, so being immersed in that,
yeah.
what type of influence did Jim have upon you? Because I know we were talking before the podcast what a huge influence he was on me, his teachings and his followings, and I'm sure many chiropractors that practice in this model would say the same thing. Jim Sigafoose was definitely a huge impact on their career and their life and their whole philosophy and thinking. So, being in the family, what type of impact did he have with you?
Well, initially, when I first met him, he did not like me at all, because it was his daughter, and he didn't know me from Adam, and it was really rough because he was a very distant person. And even when I first got in practice, when we went to Florida, they lived in Venice, Florida, and Selina was going to work with her dad, and I was going to work on my own, and we had two separate offices, and it was just kind of two people who were their egos were not allowing them to mesh at that time for whatever reason, right? I guess it would be Selina. And so what happened was I went to a gathering in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and we were doing some breathing, and I got a message that, you know what, I just need to let Dr. Sigafoose, know that I'd like to have my wife back. That's why I got married. And I'm going to move from Florida, and I'm going to move up to Pennsylvania. So after that initial shock and awe type deal, because he opened her up a practice, I said, Selina, I'm moving up to Pennsylvania. I'm going to go find a place. My grandparents are going to give me some money to open it up. Blah, 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 blah. I went up. And so she moved up here with us. And then at that point in time, he started showing me respect, because I was my own man, and started doing my own thing. And so they actually moved from Florida to Baltimore to be closer to us in that situation. And so from there, we became like the best of friends. We hung out and did everything together. I would see him every single weekend. We'd go down and visit them. They had a place on the Bush River down there on the Chesapeake. And all we did, Colin, is talk chiropractic.
Yeah.
That's all we did. Every possible avenue, aspect, any type of angle you could possibly, the good, the bad, the ugly. That's all we talked about was chiropractic, and a little bit of boxing because he liked boxing and war movies and such. But to make a long story short, we talked chiropractic up one side, down the other. And he loved it because his kids had heard it all their life, but I was still fairly new and interested in the whole subject. So talk, 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 talk. And Reggie Gold would come over and visit. Sid Williams would come over and visit. And so you'd get exposed to some really heavy mindsets at the time. And it was, again, I look back and I say, how did it happen? I don't know. He just got lucky, I guess. Innate blessed me,
Yeah.
so to speak. But anyway,
Yeah, what it sure did. It sure did. That, that's truly amazing. In fact, it makes me a little jealous actually just to being around that. And you know what? And I have the privilege of talking to a lot of young chiropractors, especially chiropractors here in Canada who've
mm,
graduated from Canadian schools and never really been exposed to that. But being
yeah.
exposed to that and those people and talking chiropractic all the time. So what type of impact did that have on you and Selina and your practice in Pennsylvania?
Well, of course, what it's going to do when you start to listen to what chiropractic is and what chiropractic isn't. You will, right away have that ability to get into practice and start telling people what chiropractic is. And of course, that's the gist of what we're here for today is telling people what chiropractic is and what it isn't, and getting them to, adopt, so to speak, or adapt to what it is that we're talking about. And vitalism is the main thing. So the influence that it had is it made us wildly successful without, just plugging in, so to speak. From day one, I remember the first week in practice that we went out and we did a screening at the local mall, and we saw 100 people the first week. And after doing doctor's reports and lay lectures and x-ray reports and care plans and such, I mean, it wasn't 7 weeks where we're already breaking 200 visits a week, and it wasn't 7 months before we're receiving 700 people a week. And it wasn't too long after that where we kind of maxed out. We see 1,000 people a week at the moment, and it fluctuates. And when I say 1,000 a week, I don't want to sound like that's arrogant or bragging, but it's really the byproduct of, and this is one of the big take home messages I've ever learned, was the byproduct of teaching philosophy is that most people will understand it. They may not come in 3 times a week and then 2 times a week or whatever your care plan is. But when they understand what chiropractic is and they own it in their heart, they'll be a patient for life or long term. And it may not be exactly how you planned it for them, but they will be there. And the thing that happens in this situation is that you just start accumulating so many people that want to be in your practice that it doesn't take much effort after that to run it. Like we don't sell care plans, so to speak. What happens with us, we just give them a really great philosophical talk, only 15 minutes long. Um, and every time they come in, we just reinforce little bits and pieces. Like Ralph Stevenson said, you need to be able to tell the chiropractic philosophy in 1,000 different ways to 1,000 different types of people. It's got to be in you so that it just spills over. You shouldn't have to use a script or anything like that. Nothing against scripts or anything like that, because again, people have to learn how to deliver it, communicate, and that's a big issue. But the deal is this: is when you constantly deliver a product that is philosophically rich and you deliver an adjustment that is congruent with what you're talking about, you're probably going to collect people who just want to stay around and refer to you. And you don't really have to do much work after that. The big thing we have to try and do, like yesterday, and I'm 60, going to be 64 soon, is 260 people came in. And Selina does all the reports and all that, and I'm back there myself just making adjustments. But the moral of the story is not one of them had a care plan that they paid up front. I'm not saying that's a bad or a good thing. I'm just saying that when it's philosophically rich, they'll be there for you and they'll refer for you. So we don't do any marketing. Our practice has zero marketing. We have, we give them a soft care plan where say this is what's we think is needed and necessary. But things adapt and change with care plans. You can't do the cookie cutter care plans. Not everybody has to be 3 times a week for 10 weeks and pay $3,500 up front. I mean, that's not a bad model, but there's another model, and that was the old DE model or the old philosophical model, where if people really understand what you do and you can really enforce that, not make it a sales thing, not where you use chiropractic philosophy and you broadcast it to people in hopes that they'll sign up for your care. But when you're actually trying to, and this leads into why I love doing what we do, as I just love going in, meeting a new person, and telling them what chiropractic is, and seeing if I can meet them where they're at and get them to understand what it is they're thinking about and what they're thinking about chiropractically, and seeing if they can, you know, adapt to it and adopt to it. and that's the fun. I mean, and it's even when you have a new patient who hasn't been in for a while, a reactivated patient, they come in with 101 symptoms and you say, hey, let's sit down, let's just go over it again. And it's having that ability to keep explaining. You know, the joke about Mary, you remember that one,
I
Sigafoose?
remember Mary. Heard it many
Yeah.
times.
And
Yep.
you know, and that's really a good way of looking at it, because you just have to keep kind of gently reminding people and leading them. If you're going to be a leader, you just lead them into what the philosophy is and lead them what into their body, what it is that their body is capable of. You know, you asked some of your questions that you gave me beforehand, just as a primer of what we might talk about. Asked, well, what is my going to be my favorite case that ever came in? And there's several of them, and like for yourself, but of course, you know, one that sticks out best in my mind, or a couple that stick out best in my mind, are kids that come in with failure to thrive. You know, where the mother says, hey, nothing else works, I'm willing. And you tell that lady, or the mom and the dad, you tell them that, you know, the whole reason that they're not thriving and what it is to thrive, of course, it's nervous system expression, at least from our point of view. And so some of my favorite cases are kids that come in who were left to really. I had a kid that came in, was they just told him to go home. He's not going to survive, right? And now he's 13 years old and he's a big muscle bound guy, and he thrives like crazy. But there's a guy that just came in yesterday, and he's so excited because and this may sound odd that he's so excited, but he has terminal cancer, and he's been a long-term patient, and he has colon cancer spread to his liver, and he's only has 12 months to live. And he's been given the choice of chemotherapy that might allow him to live to 2 years or maybe even three. But otherwise, they put a label on it that he's only going to live to be 12 more months, right? So he took me aside and he said, look, I'm going to change my ways, you know, and I'm going to start eating totally different. And I'm going to start, he was going to do the keto diet, and he's going to do vitamin C injections, and he's going to do vitamin D, and he's going to do ivermectin. But he said, first and foremost, what I want to do is I'm going to come in every single day. Now, this is him telling me, and this is what makes me happy about being a chiropractor, or gets me excited about being in practice. He told me, I didn't tell him, but he told me that he wants to get his atlas checked every single solitary day to make sure that he's functioning the way that he should be, so that he can utilize all the other things that he's doing, because he hasn't been doing that. He learned, or he heard that he should be doing that. He never did that, but he understands that the body has this, you know, this inherent recuperative power to heal itself. And that's what he's putting more faith in than the chemotherapy. And, you know, the exciting part about that whole thing is that he told me that. I didn't tell him that. He told me that. And that's the exciting thing about being in chiropractic, is getting people to that level of thinking. And you can only do that if you are teaching people from the heart and with love, and you have nothing else attached to it. You know, if I have, you know, again, I keep bringing this up, and Selina hates when I do this, but if I have money attached to it, if I have an outcome attached that he's going to get well, if I have a certain dollar figure or a certain amount of visits that are going to come in, it probably is not going to cause your practice to thrive. It may for a few people. They'll buy into it and say, hey, that really sounds cool. I want to see the curve come back on my x-ray. And even though I do x-rays, pre and post x-rays, and I like to see a curve come back, what I really like to do is see the person's mindset change. And that's the mindset I'm not talking about, is they actually believe that their body is self-healing again. It's not a meme that you see on TikTok or Facebook, but they actually own it and are willing to put themselves in the line of fire or death. He's happy if he dies, but he's happy if he survives. But he's going to let his body be the deciding factor.
Yeah, and that, like, I'm getting goosebumps listening to you. And you know, you brought up the story that Sig used to talk about with Mary, and really it was funny because that story, and I've heard it, gosh, well over 20 times from him. But that was a story that I brought back and told to the team, and we collectively as a team decided that our mission statement was to share the principle of chiropractic with people. It
Mm.
wasn't to grow a practice, it wasn't to adjust as many people as possible, it wasn't a collection goal. Our goal was to share the principle with people. So everybody that came in basically had to go through a doctor's report so they could learn the principle. And if they weren't willing to do that, we weren't willing to have them as a patient. And we were completely disconnected from the outcome, but the goal was that they would hear the principle of chiropractic, and as a result of that, our practice grew like crazy, like yours. So I'm loving this conversation because that really resonates with what we did. And that's, it's funny because I'm a proponent for chiropractic expanding into the masses. I really want to see, and I think it really has to start with the school system, to be
Mhm.
able to teach principles to students so that they can go out and share the message with the mass population.
Yeah.
And I would love for this to be taught more in all of the schools, not just a select few of them.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. And we all want to see, I mean, we want to see that happen. I can't say we all want to see that happen. The problem right now is that chiropractic is in a state of decline. And there's more, unfortunately, it's not that the people practicing chiropractic are, any less of chiropractors that they were before, but what it is a population of chiropractors. My wife Selina has been the president of the ICA, so we got
Yes. Hmm.
access to numbers and probably data points that not everybody has access to. But the sorry state that we're experiencing right now is there's more chiropractors retiring than coming into the profession. And we're starting to see a decline in the enrollment in the schools. And there's reasons for that too. But, if we have a goal or we have a vision, I should say, that we want to see chiropractic expand worldwide, it's a beautiful mindset, but man, we really need more chiropractors. And I think one of the main things that we can do if we ever wanted to help is we have 70,000 chiropractors in the United States, and probably how many in Canada do you have?
Probably about a tenth of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
And so we have this group of chiropractors, and the deal is that hardly any chiropractor gives back to their school. I was talking to Jill and Marsh, and he says it's a very embarrassing low number that actually give money back to the school. And then if you've ever been involved with your state organization, you know how difficult it is to get people on, in the organization, just to even be a member and to participate at some level. And then to get people involved in politics is just like pulling teeth. It's very difficult. So we have a dilemma on our hands, and we have to really consider, it'd be nice to just say, hey, if everybody just kept doing orientations, but, and everybody got in on board with, what it is that we're talking about. And we're blessed, and I'll always be blessed. And more than likely, my child who just graduated, she'll be blessed being a chiropractor too. But it's a scary thing that we're in decline. Um, and it's something that we need to come together, because you talked about collaboration and organizations collaborating together instead of competing together. Even between Life and Life West and Sherman, there's a air of competition between the schools and some type of roadblocks or hurdles that you can feel that doesn't allow them to freely integrate with each other. And one will have something to say about the other school and blah 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 blah. And it's a sorry state of affairs that way. And so when you talked about leadership and what you're looking for leadership in these different organizations, of course, you want more people who are there for the love of chiropractic, and they want to see, like, someone who's going to, like you, Colin, who's taken his time today and do a podcast and broadcast it out to people, so that a few people's mindset might be changed and that they might step up and try to make a difference. Because the expansion of physical therapy, there's over 220 PT schools right now, and they're expanded like crazy, and they're really hot on our tail as to the neurological part of chiropractic. And you see all kinds of neurological testing that they're doing and neurological changes that they're making with body movements, et cetera, et cetera. And now the big thing on Facebook and TikTok and all that are people talking about neurological regulation. That's like a buzzword now, and it's almost like a page of the chiropractic philosophy. We don't really regulate nervous systems. We allow it to be operating unfettered and let the body do what it needs to do. But we see, I see in the next 10 years, if we don't step up and really start working together, I mean, really drop the attitudes, towards, the egos, and we got the right, the problem is, and talking about Jim Sigafoose, not to get off on a tangent here, but Sigafoose once said, and this was right before he died, we're sitting at the front, right on the front porch of my house here. He said that the principled side of the aisle, the principled chiropractors will continue, as far as he could tell, they'll continue. They had been ever since 1895. They'll continue to, fight amongst themselves, who has the best rendition of the chiropractic philosophy, who has the best technique, and who has the best approach to science. Will continue to just criticize and not work with each other, while the therapeutic side of the aisle will start to band together to make a push and change laws and change people, and we might relegate ourselves into oblivion if we can't get past ourselves. And we all know this, of course, and it's unfortunate, but it seems, and I'll tell you what's been changing, and it's scary, but it's good. So I'm the vice president of our state organization. I have been for quite some years. It's the Chiropractic Fellowship of Pennsylvania, and there's another one which is much bigger, which is the therapeutic side, or the all-encompassing side. And they're very nice people. It's the Pennsylvania Chiropractic Association. Well, they reached out to us. They reached out to us this year and last year. They're writing the bill. They as a state organization, we can write. We have the rights to change the law of what chiropractic is, right? So they wanted to include us, and it's costing them millions of dollars to write this bill. And then you have to get a sponsor of the bill and get it passed and all that kind of stuff. But to make a long story short, they included us. And of course, I went through the bill with a fine-tooth comb, and I noticed that nowhere in the bill did it say anything about a neurological. It's all musculoskeletal based, right? But I brought that up, and I brought it up to our organization, their organization. Of course, we got the bill to be changed to neuromusculoskeletal. We had to meet them halfway there. I mean, we had people in my organization saying, that's not chiropractic. We shouldn't do this. We shouldn't be working with them. And I'd say, well, we have no money to make our own bill. Our organization doesn't have the millions of dollars, and we have a lobbyist and all that, but it's just not going to happen. So we started working together with them. We changed the bill. We rewrote it. We got them to maintain the nomenclature of chiropractic philosophy and principle of chiropractic, and they readily put that in. It's not like they're our enemy. I mean, I think the problem, and I hope this doesn't get taken the wrong way, but I think the principled side of things, or the straight side of things, we can be our own enemy sometimes. And if we work with others, then we can do more powerful things together. So look, we've changed a bill. Okay. Now, just recently, the Florida Chiropractic Association, which is the big one down in Florida, and they have the biggest seminar in the world now. It's called the National. Do you know about the National? And it's in Orlando.
I've
So
never been, but I've heard. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, they have 400 vendors. That's more vendors than most of us have when we have a meeting, right? And they have, over 3,000 people have registered already. It's going to be in in August. So I'm speaking for 4 hours there, and this isn't to toot my horn, but what it is, when they asked me, they said, we want more philosophically based speakers, and we want more philosophically congruent techniques being taught. And I thought to myself, hey, this group is actually doing what Sigafoose said. They're organizing, because everybody sees, anybody who's in the the upper side of things, if you're just a regular chiropractor who just wants to get through life and retire and have a practice, and that's one thing. But if you're really interested in keeping this thing alive, you have to be at some top level of an organization to see what the heck is going on. But anyways, things are kind of changing that way. But I'll tell you a scary thing. You know that Life University is the biggest chiropractic college, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So do you know the second biggest one, though? And you may or may not, and this is a fun question. So just give it a shot. See if you know the second biggest.
That's a great question, and I'm going to say it's not one of the vitalistically based, subluxation based schools.
You're correct. And
I'm going to go out on a limb and say perhaps Logan.
that was very close. It's Parker.
Parker. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So here's the deal. Life has about 1,600, 1,700 students on campus, chiropractic students on campus. Parker has 1,500.
Mm.
So the deal is is they're rallying and they're broadcasting, they're teaching, and the deal is at a certain point, life isn't has the chance of not being the biggest chiropractic school, and that really makes a blow to the vitalistic movement. But you can see, to just to give you a vision, if we say, hey, these therapeutic modeled schools are starting to grow and thrive, and the vitalistic ones they're okay. I mean, Life is doing great, and Life West, I gotta hand it to Life West. They have almost, somewhere around 650 students enrolled. They're doing a great job, but it takes several schools, and now so Life West has a good model, and I'll just expand. Am I talking too much? By the way,
No, I love it. This is awesome.
I say I get, I run away, Colin, with the program there.
This is good.
But what Life is doing, Life West, I should say, is they're going to be, I heard through the grapevine that they're going to look into the model of opening up more satellite offices so that they can expose more people who can't really afford to live maybe in San Francisco and go to school like my daughter did. She went to San Francisco. Of course, the whole family has to get behind it, right? And it's a major ordeal, but not a lot of people can afford to go there. But if it's closer, like in Pennsylvania, University of Pittsburgh just opened a chiropractic school. I'm not
Oh,
sure if you
really?
know that. And that's a
Not aware
major,
of that.
yeah, that's a major research school. And so this is a good check mark in the right direction. It wasn't all gloom and doom. There is good stuff going on. So at the University of Pittsburgh, and it may not be the most vitalistic school, but it's a school. But if you work with the people in the school, like, if we reach out and when we talk to them and go speak at the school, that's why it takes people like you and I who just want to reach out and go say, hey, can we give our experience? Can we work within the confines of what you guys, not that we want it's our way or no way. And that's what I was really meaning about the super straight approach, is where it becomes it's my way or the only way. And if it isn't that way, then we want nothing to do with you and you're
Right.
done. And then we're going to go into oblivion soon down the road. But you got this major research school that has a medical school, a dental school, a PT school, and now they have a chiropractic school. And they're willing to put a chiropractic school. It's like one of the best universities, in the country. So awesome that way. But are they practicing chiropractic? And that's why if we have more people, and your podcast is a way of getting that out there. But it's very, very, very important. Very important.
This is brilliant conversation, Kevin, and I love it. And this is something that we talk about in our circles very often, is that as chiropractors, we really need to embrace our uniqueness for a few reasons. For the profession, so that the general public can look at us as being something truly unique. Because if we fit ourselves into the whole sickness care realm and compare ourselves to the therapists, physiotherapists, massage therapists, osteopaths, medical doctors who become treaters of symptoms, we fit into that whole system, and therefore we lose our uniqueness. And the public says, well, why would I go to a chiropractor when I can go, especially here in Canada, when I can go to another therapist and the government pays for it? Why would I pay cash out of my pocket? So keeping our philosophy and sharing the principle with people, because you said it earlier, once people really understand and own the philosophy of chiropractic, you never lose it. Like you can't, once it impermeates you and it permeates your soul. And I would say for chiropractors who finally really understood the principle and started to own the principle, you can't go back the other way. There's an
Mhm.
incongruency in your own paradigm, in your thinking,
Yeah.
So I really feel that that's the way that we have to go, and just share that with more and more people.
You're so right. You're so right. And if you think about it, with the artificial intelligence that's coming up, right? And people are getting into it, chat GPT and such. You can literally go on there and you can say, hey, I have a sore lower back. Give me all the physical therapy exercises. Give me all the videos that
Mhm.
are available. And you can look online. And so what this is going to cause in our profession and other professions is that people are going to be able to do it all from home. They're going to have all that access available to them, and and you talk about 10 years down the road, you're going to see a massive shift in how people take care of themselves. And if that's not bad enough, that you'll be able to dial in. See, you usually went to a doctor, a chiropractor, or someone in authority because they had knowledge that you didn't possess. And now all of a sudden, this knowledge is going to be right at your fingertips on your phone, and videos and care plans that you can dial in for yourself. And that's going to be a rude awakening for a lot of people. And to make it worse, they're coming out with different machines now that are going to be available, like the soft wave machine and the shock therapy and all that kind of stuff, where you're going to be able to go to not only a chiropractor or physical therapist or a massage therapist, because there's going to be these people, when you start manufacturing these machines and you change the rules about who can use them and all that kind of stuff, they're going to be able to go get dialed in for anything that you want taken care of from a symptomatic standpoint. So the symptomatic or the therapeutic side is really, it's going to be a boom for some practitioners, but it's going to be a real low for other practitioners, because you're going to be able to get it everywhere at any time that you want to. So mark my words, the next 10 years, it's going to really separate the cream from the rest. It's going to, the really good people are explaining philosophy, because here's one thing you can't get. When you go into a chiropractic office and you can feel the love as soon as you walk in that door, when you open that door and you feel the front desk person and the chiropractic assistant chiropractor who actually are in love with what they're doing, you walk in there, it's going to be it's a magical experience. And when you get an adjustment that actually connects, man to spiritual, man to physical, if you can make a good adjustment and really release that nervous system, and the person knows what just happened, if they have the philosophical ammunition in their mind and they experience what happened, you can't replace that. You can't get that one on AI. You can't get it. You can't get it in a slow wave machine, right? You can't have your child who has a failure to thrive, that you hand them, to the chiropractor and get this child to thrive. You can't have this guy who, has terminal cancer and has everything available to him and all the insurance available, every treatment available to him. And he makes a choice where he says, I want to go where I can get my body to thrive better, and it's got to come from the brain and the spinal cord. And that's why the uniqueness, the separate, unique and distinct approach that you were referring to earlier. And it's not, all chiropractors are not separate, unique, and distinct. It's a very few people who actually present a separate and unique and distinct approach to adjusting the spine. And I really think upper cervical care is very important. I think all care, I think full spine is very important too.
Mhm.
But I think if a person, and not everybody can do, and here's, I think, going to be the greatest thing, is that PTs shy away from any upper cervical adjustments, because of the stroke concerns. But I think if there's one thing that we own still, it was one thing that we owned way back when, and is the upper cervical adjustment, and being very good at that, very precise with that, and teaching very specifically about what that does. I think that is a ticket like you wouldn't believe.
And I know, so you just opened up the door there, which I want to ask you this question. I have this in my notes, is you're very, very, very well versed at upper cervical adjusting. In fact, you've actually developed a very unique and specific technique, Cranio-Cervical Jackson technique, which I know you teach. So can you explain a little bit about that and how it really is congruent with the philosophy and what you're looking for when you do that technique?
Well, I'll give you the short answer to it. And so, I was a rugby player, and of course, I got a bad concussion when I played rugby, and I was suffering with these concussion symptoms that wouldn't go away. I was doing all the concussion type stuff that you would normally do. And then, but when I did get adjusted, I was at school, I was a player at the time. I got my upper cervical adjustment, and I knew that was part of it, but man, that really just took care of everything, right? And so I've always been a big proponent of upper cervical care and practicing upper cervical care. And so the original technique that I did was meant to be done on the sidelines. So I developed some equipment for football and hockey and that, but slows down angular acceleration. Actually, I'm talking about that in Salt Lake City this weekend, not this weekend, but next weekend, coming up at an upper cervical conference. But make a long story short, upper cervical care, there's over 10 techniques to do it with. And I started out with doing knee chest type work, and then I moved to toggle, and then I did a little bit of CBP, and then I developed my own technique over time. And I'm always looking for things that are efficient and work. So essentially what this is, it's a technique that you don't need x-rays, but if you have x-rays, that's really good. And you can be on the sideline doing it to someone and use an instrument to make the adjustment because I think it has better optics than, say, cracking someone's neck on the sideline. Okay. It started out as a sideline technique. So essentially, it's a way of looking at the neurology. You just do the Atlas faucet testing. You find if there's some type of physiological deficit between the left and the right, and you can do also grip testing with a dynamometer. So I try and be as objective as possible. So objectivity is a very important thing. I used to use X-rays a lot to do my work, but when I was in school, I also did a research study with Dr. Grosdick, and he was telling me that his Atlas assessment was a little different than, say, Kale's Atlas assessment, and sometimes they're opposite to each other. So he said that, and what I learned from Dr. Grosdick is he said not just because they're very specific measurements doesn't mean it's the right measurement, and you have to come to grips with that because it's just because you have a technique, your technique isn't the best technique always. So Grosdick taught me that, hey, you got to really use other things other than X-ray. And that's all I'll say about that particular one is that even though if you do x-rays and if you do line drawings, it's not the end all be all because there's so many different abnormalities that occur with the facet joints with the things that are on the x-rays. But I'll tell you this one, and this has really fried my mind. I was in Florida one time. I was at Sigafoose's place in Florida, and he got sick. I think he had some type of heart issue. And so I was there on a break. And so I was hanging out with them, and the girls had gone somewhere, but Reggie Gold had come to visit them. So I got Reggie Gold and Jim Sigafoose, and we're in Florida. And Reggie came specifically to take care of Sigafoose with his technique, and he did some type of advanced muscle palpation technique. And I told him proudly, he says, so, well, how's it going? And how you doing in school? And I told him about I'm into upper cervical, and I thought he'd be like, wow, that's great. And he looked at me and he says, that is a bunch of bullshit.
From Reggie.
He goes, X-rays that's one person puts them on this way, another puts it on this way, and then they take another one and say you corrected that way. He goes, that's just one picture in time. He wasn't saying it was a bad thing to do, but as a student, you're like having this guy that you put up on a pedestal saying that is bullshit, man. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
but make a long story short, he was really into palpation. I think palpation is great, but it's so low in consistency from one person to the next. But what I do think, and what I developed with the technique that I came up with over a decade ago or so, is just range of motion. And if you think of what a chiropractor does, for example, if you can't turn your head to the left and you have decreased range of motion to the left, we hope that the chiropractor would try to change the biomechanics and adjust you to the left and have better range of motion and free up the tension on the joints and the nervous system. So we use range of motion as a big predictor, but it's patient guided range of motion. So what we do is after I make my full spine adjustment, I'll have someone sit up and they'll go through the different ranges of motion. And, we try and do the basic range of motion. There's some advanced ones that we do. By making a long story short, anybody out there, after you make your best adjustment, if you have a patient sit up and they still have stiffness going in one direction, they're probably not biomechanically corrected, right? And also, they may not be neurologically corrected. And so that's what we use. We use infrared technology for the Atlas. Sometimes we use an infrared thermographer to take pictures of the face before and after. That's more of an educational thing. But we really focus on biomechanics, and all the adjustments are based on the biomechanics of the spine. And that's why I think it's such a congruent and scientific technique, because it's all based on biomechanics and it has an objective system built in. But if you want to learn more about that, I'll give you my cell number at the end. But it's been really wildly successful. I mean, we have chiropractors. I went up to Sudbury and we had 30 people take it up at Sudbury, and I still talk to almost half of those people now. Just keep contacting me and say they really enjoy the technique and it really gets some good results. But the take home message was this, is that it's a technique that takes minutes to do, as opposed to some of the techniques out there take several minutes to hours to get an idea of what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. You got to read this. And there's so many like we take a lot of students in and they do internships in our office. And that's the big thing about Pennsylvania that I love. I don't know if they have this available in Ontario, but Life and Life West students come all the time. I'll have 3 of them at once at a time. And you'll have them do a toggle, and you'll see that the elbow angle is different, the wrist angle is different, the shoulder, the placement, and they'll be really interested in it. But the difference in delivering the technique, say a toggle, is just all over the place. So even though it's meant to be a specific adjustment, I don't think you can get anything more specific than taking an instrument, holding it, going along the lines of range of motion that the person just demonstrated to you that was deficient, and making a gentle impulse and then rechecking the range of motion. And if it checks out that it cleared out biomechanically, you couldn't get better than that if you ask me. Anyways, I could talk for 4 hours about it. I won't bore you anymore about that, but I love it, and it's really taken off. It's in. See, we have a guy in Germany, guy in and so it really only formally been doing it since January. A couple guys in Spain, a bunch of Canadians are doing it, and there's hundreds of Americans that are doing it because, of course, that's where I live right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing, though. And I know so some of our listeners are going to be very interested in that. So we will link up your contact information in the bottom so they can find out more about the technique and maybe get in contact with you to learn more. Yeah, I find that brilliant. So I'd like to sum up with just a few questions, if you don't mind. So bottom line, so through the years, I mean, you've been influenced by so many, giants in the profession, people who have really steered the profession in directions to take it to the next level. What is the best advice that you remember ever getting, whether it be as a student before, even before chiropractic school, during the time of a student, or through your early chiropractic years? What was the best piece of advice and who did that come from?
Well, the best advice came from my closest mentor, of course, with Jim Sigafoose. And the best piece of advice that we ever got is that your best marketing is going to be the orientation. And you have to get really good at giving a heartfelt orientation that connects with the person. And it can't be too long, and it can't be too critical of medicine, and it can't be too high on yourself. It's just there, and it should be done with such love and such conviction that, and such so digestible by the patient listening to it, that when you're done with the orientation, that people automatically would like to have their family checked. That would be your barometer to see if you did a good job.
Mhm.
Because we have a lot of good orators out there that can take and learn all the lingo and language of chiropractic, but to deliver that in a way that makes people act in a different way is really an art in its own. Like, for example, you can say hi to someone, a lady. You could say hi to a lady and it could be non anything. You could say hi to a lady and can make her feel like you're trying to pick her up and come on to her. Or you can say hi to a lady and make her feel completely comfortable because she knows she's safe with who you are and what you're doing.
Mhm.
So there's that's the X factor in the whole thing, is that you have to get so good at delivering an orientation, and then everything else changes in your office from there. The second piece of advice that came from Jim Sigafoose is he was in my office one time, and at the end of the day we went out for dinner, and he says, "You do too much, man. You do way too much." I said, "What? What does that mean?" And he said, "Well, you talk too much, number one. You talk too much to people. You talk too much. You think that they want to hear you. They want to feel you. They want to feel you, right? They'll take two or three words that you said at best. They'll forget half of it in about an hour after they leave you, but they want to feel you. And you do way too much. You do way too much. You're adjusting everything. You're checking ankles and knees and elbows and full spines. And he'd say, you just do too much. And that doesn't work. You know, it works for a little bit on a therapeutic side, but that doesn't work. So believe it or not, he taught me that you say too much and you do too much. And as a result, my adjustment is probably around 2 minutes. But people feel, and it's not to pull the wool over their eyes, they just feel like they've had the full service after 2 minutes because it was a direct and intentional. And what was my intention? My intention wasn't to get them to do what I said I wanted them to do. The intention was to serve them and to allow their innate to be expressed fully. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant, and I love it. And Jim Parker used to call that present time consciousness and or being in state. And I know Sig used to talk about that all the time. There's no point in playing a piano up and down the spine if you can't be fully engaged and in love with the person that you're with at the time. So that is awesome, awesome advice. Dr. Kevin, this has been absolutely amazing. And I'd like to just give you one more opportunity here. And I want to just ask one more question. And sometimes what I like to do with my guests on the podcast is give you the opportunity to ask me a question. And maybe that opens up a little different perspective on certain things. So is there a question that you'd like to ask me?
Well, I would like to know what you're up to right now. What is your major goal and joy and thrust for the chiropractic profession at the
Yeah.
moment?
Well, awesome. So well, thank you for opening up that door. But so big, hairy vision is that my wife and I had a wonderful practice, very similar to you and Dr. Selina. And our associate was, this is how BJ Palmer works. And one of his famous quotes was, "You never know how far-reaching something you think, say, or do today can affect the lives of millions tomorrow." I had a 12, 13-year-old patient who came in with his family going back many years ago, asked me questions about chiropractic. And I actually said to him, "You'd be a great chiropractor. That's what you should do for a living." And sure enough, he followed that path. He came in and shadowed. He ended up going away to Palmer College, became a chiropractor, practiced out Western Canada, came back as an associate, and then bought our practice in 2022 after 30 years of practice. So he's now taken over the practice. I still am in touch with them. In fact, we do some marketing for them, and which has just been absolutely wonderful. But it's freed up my time to say, okay, I don't want to retire. I want to use this part of my life to help advance the chiropractic profession. So hence I love doing this podcast. This is one of the most fun things I've ever done because I get to meet people like yourself and have these wonderful conversations. But I would really like, and part of our conversation was to see the school system advance in a vitalistic model, philosophically based model. And I know in Canada that is lacking. And so one of my big goals is to see another school be planted in Canada. And you actually mentioned during our conversation about Life West planting satellite clinics. Well, we're actually currently in discussion with board members of Life West to open that door to plant another school here in Canada. So it's in the very early stages, but before I leave this mortal coil, I would love to see that happen.
That is outstanding. Just absolutely outstanding. That's wonderful. That'd be a wonderful, wonderful thing.
I think that's where our profession needs to go. We just need to have, as you say, more chiropractors, more students, and more people that really understand the philosophy of chiropractic and can share that with the world. And I think that's how the profession advances.
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you for stepping up and wanting to do that because a lot of times we just want to go off into the sunset and just enjoy life. And but if you can get, excuse me, if you can get enjoyment out of moving the profession forward, what a beautiful thing.
it really is. And I tried that for the first little while, and it was too boring. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love this part of it.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Kevin, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your time, and it's been awesome to get to at least get to know you a little bit. And I look forward to the next time we can meet, hopefully in person.
Dr. Collin, I surely love and appreciate you and thank you.
Likewise. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you.